One early morning, John Quincy watches the news in silence, lost in thought. Moments later, he rushes outside when a bank tow truck pulls up in front of his house to repossess the family car.
Yeah, try paying your bills.
The car belongs to his wife, Denise, but John has no choice but to let it go. They barely have enough left to cover 1 month's rent. The factories have moved to Mexico, and his full-time position has been reduced to part-time work, making it harder and harder to support his family. He promises Denise that he will find another job, but she is still too frustrated to respond and calls their son Michael down for breakfast. The mood quickly changes when Michael arrives pretending to be a bodybuilder, making both of his parents laugh. Despite all the financial pressure surrounding them, the family enjoys the drive, joking and chatting along the way.
$100. Continent. Okay, right? Mom?
That's for it.
What?
What is no good?
Michael tells his father that he has saved $46 and that John can use it if he needs the money. Touched by his son's kindness, John gently tells him to keep saving it instead. But when John says goodbye, Michael immediately corrects him, reminding his father to say "see you later" instead because goodbye sounds too final. Although John is struggling financially, he's not facing everything alone. Besides his loving family, he also has a loyal friend named Jimmy Palumbo, who is always there to support him. When work ends that afternoon, Jimmy accompanies John to a job interview. Seeing hundreds of applicants waiting outside, Jimmy jokingly tells him not to get his hopes up. He believes the manager has probably already promised the job to a relative and warns John that interviews like these usually end with excuses such as being overqualified or having a resume kept on file. John laughs off the warning, but when his turn finally comes, he hears those exact same words. The interviewer tells him he is overqualified and promises to keep his resume on file, leaving John without another job once again. Even so, John refuses to let disappointment keep him down. He continues attending church and never misses Michael's baseball games. One afternoon, John and Denise proudly watch from the bleachers as Michael steps up to bat. Denise cheers louder than anyone else.
Keep your head down on the ball.
On the second pitch, Michael hits the ball and takes off. As he rounds first base, he suddenly collapses. John immediately rushes onto the field, lifts his unconscious son into his arms, and speeds to the nearest hospital. Doctors and nurses quickly begin examining Michael while asking whether he has any allergies. Denise repeatedly tells them that he has none, desperately begging for answers as panic begins to overwhelm her. A nurse escorts both parents away so the medical team can continue treating the boy. A short while later, Michael's condition stabilizes, and his parents are finally allowed to see him. Although they still have no idea what caused him to collapse, Nurse Reggie explains that Michael's systolic blood pressure had dropped below 90. If it had continued falling to 70, his life would have been in immediate danger. The following day, John and Denise meet with hospital director Rebecca Payne and heart specialist Dr. Raymond Turner. At first, Dr. Turner explains Michael's condition using complicated medical terms until John politely asks him to put it in simpler words. Dr. Turner explains that Michael's heart has become much larger than normal because blood is flowing backward instead of pumping properly. His heart is slowly failing, and the only way to save his life is with a heart transplant. Knowing the family's financial situation, Rebecca gently explains that without a transplant, they can only try to keep Michael alive for a few more weeks. Fighting back tears, John asks Dr. Turner what he would do if it were his own son. Dr. Turner answers honestly that he would choose the transplant. Hearing that, John immediately asks how much the operation will cost. Rebecca does not hide the truth. A heart transplant could cost around $250,000, and John's insurance policy does not provide enough coverage. Certain there must be a mistake, John repeatedly insists they are wrong. Rebecca tells him to check directly with his insurance company. She also explains that before Michael's name can even be placed on the donor waiting list, the hospital requires a 30% down payment, about $75,000. John and Denise leave the meeting in complete despair. As they walk through the hallway, a kind doctor named Ellen Klein catches up with them. She encourages them not to give up and suggests contacting the insurance company again, along with every possible human resources department and state assistance program that might be able to help. Following her advice, John immediately contacts his insurance company. Although he has faithfully paid for insurance over the years, the company explains that after his hours were reduced to part-time work, his coverage was also reduced. Under his current policy, the maximum payout is only $20,000. Still needing tens of thousands more just for the deposit, John files an appeal and also applies for government welfare assistance. But he finds himself trapped in the middle. He's not poor enough to qualify for government help, yet nowhere near wealthy enough to afford the surgery himself.
I'm sorry I can't help you.
My son is dying, I'm broke. If I don't qualify, who the hell does?
I'm sorry.
A few days later, the insurance company finally sends him a letter. Filled with hope, John rushes to the hospital and proudly shows it to Rebecca. His hope quickly disappears. The letter is only a confirmation that his appeal has been received. Friends and strangers do everything they can to help. John's church raises donations, and Jimmy contributes whatever money he can spare. John sells nearly everything he owns, his furniture, the family car, and even his wedding ring. Even after sacrificing everything, the money is still nowhere near enough. Desperate, he reaches out to the media, hoping someone will tell Michael's story. The reporter barely reacts, saying that someone will contact him later. As the days continue to pass, the hospital can no longer keep Michael admitted without payment. Unable to accept John's promises any longer, Denise demands that he do something before losing their son.
Do something!
Staring at the bodybuilder posters covering the walls, John finally makes a decision. He returns to the hospital with a handgun hidden beneath his jacket. At that moment, Dr. Turner is speaking with a wealthy patient when John interrupts him. Frustrated, he asks why Michael is still being denied treatment even after he has already managed to pay $22,000. Dr. Turner pulls John aside and explains that the decision is not his to make. He is only a doctor. John takes out one of the hospital's brochures and points to the millions of dollars the hospital has earned from hundreds of heart surgeries. He asks why they cannot give his son more time. Although he cannot pay the full amount today, he promises that he will repay every cent if only Michael can receive the transplant. Dr. Turner still refuses. Left with no other choice, John reluctantly begins taking hostages, something he never wanted to do. He orders security guard Max to make sure nobody enters or leaves the emergency department. Realizing the waiting room is full of injured patients needing treatment, John immediately announces that everyone there will receive free medical care and tells them to stay calm. Nurse Steve is treating a man named Lester for a hand injury when an ambulance suddenly arrives with a gunshot victim. After making sure the paramedics are not police officers, John allows the patient inside but orders the ambulance crew to leave immediately. He then forces Dr. Turner to treat the wounded man, reminding him that saving lives should matter more than money.
75 milligrams Demerol IV, lidocaine 2% local. Let's go. Scrub right now.
Outside, police cars quickly surround the hospital, and Lieutenant Frank Grimes arrives to take command of the negotiations. While Frank gathers information outside, John is constantly moving from patient to patient inside the emergency room. One pregnant woman is about to give birth, while another man named Mitch repeatedly complains about how long it is taking for his girlfriend's broken arm to be treated. Frank finally contacts John through Max's walkie-talkie and introduces himself. John identifies himself only as John Q and makes a single demand: put his son, Michael, on the heart transplant waiting list. Frank tells John that he is also a father and tries to reason with him peacefully. John immediately cuts him off. If anyone inside the hospital dies today, the responsibility will belong entirely to Frank. Later, John tries to distract himself by talking with a nervous father whose wife is in labor. He asks whether the man wants a boy or a girl. The husband says he does not care, as long as the baby is healthy. Realizing what he has just said, the man immediately apologizes. John simply stays silent and changes the subject. His attention turns to Mitch, who claims his girlfriend's arm was broken after another driver crashed into their car and the airbags jammed. John quickly points out that Mitch's 1986 Mercedes 500 was never equipped with airbags. Lester immediately joins the conversation, bluntly saying everyone knows Mitch is the one who beat his own girlfriend. Meanwhile, elsewhere in a hospital, Denise still has no idea what John has done. She remains beside Michael's bed, waiting for her husband to return. Trying to lift Michael's spirits, Nurse Reggie brings him a muscular action figure as a gift. But when a patient in the next room suddenly passes away, Denise becomes even more frightened, fearing that time is running out for her own son. Outside the hospital, Celebrity Police Chief Gus Monroe arrives and pressures Lieutenant Frank Grimes to end the hostage situation quickly and quietly. Frank shows little respect for the order and bluntly tells him to stay where the cameras are. While tension continues to rise outside, the atmosphere inside the emergency room is surprisingly calm. John and the hostages sit together eating snacks as they talk. Curious, John asks why none of Michael's doctors discovered his heart condition during all of his regular checkups. Nurse Steve shares his own opinion, believing many doctors are pressured by HMOs to avoid ordering expensive tests so insurance companies can keep costs down. Even when serious illnesses are found, insurance companies often refuse to pay, leaving the patient to die. Lester immediately joins the conversation, accusing doctors of becoming hypocrites who have forgotten the oath they once swore to uphold. Rather than continue the argument, John decides to call Denise. Instead, the call is routed to Frank. Playing along, John immediately asks whether Michael's name has finally been placed on the donor list. Frank avoids giving a direct answer. Instead, he asks John to release a few hostages, saying trust has to be built from both sides. At that moment, Dr. Ellen Klein informs John that the pregnant woman must be transferred to the maternity ward immediately. Although it was never part of his plan, John agrees without hesitation and lets her go. Just then, Mitch suddenly creates a distraction with the expected father before charging at John. The two struggle across the room. As John's pistol slides across the floor, Mitch's girlfriend reaches it first. Instead of picking up the gun, she sprays Mitch in the face with pepper spray, cursing him for abusing her. John quickly regains control, handcuffs Mitch to a wall heater, and also releases the expectant couple and a Mexican woman. Outside, the crowd erupts into cheers. Reporters immediately surround the released hostages, asking what kind of man John Q really is. Without thinking twice, the Mexican woman tells everyone that John is actually a kind man. Meanwhile, reporter Tuck Lampley notices officers monitoring the hospital through security cameras and orders his tech guy to hack into the live feed. Hospital director Rebecca Payne also arrives outside but refuses to give in to John's demands. She argues that if she makes an exception for one family, countless similar cases will follow. Rebecca firmly reminds both Chief Monroe and Frank that the healthcare system is not her creation. If they truly want to change it, they should take their fight to the politicians rather than blame the hospital. While Frank continues searching for a peaceful solution, Chief Monroe begins preparing a plan to kill John instead. Inside the emergency room, the discussions continue. Still handcuffed to the heater, Mitch complains that nowhere feels safe anymore. Gunmen can now be found in schools, post offices, and even hospitals. Dr. Turner agrees that guns have become far too easy to obtain. Mitch then turns to John and asks what he will do if Michael's name is still not placed on the transplant list. John pauses for a moment before answering honestly. He does not know. All he can do now is stay there and keep hoping. At that very moment, miles away on a winding mountain road, a wealthy woman speeds along in her brand new BMW 5 Series. Growing impatient behind a slow-moving truck, she ignores its signal and pulls out to overtake it. As she moves into the opposite lane, another truck suddenly appears heading straight toward her. Instead of braking, she desperately tries to complete the pass. She fails. The oncoming truck slams into her car, sending it spinning directly in front of the truck she had tried to overtake. The devastating crash kills her instantly. Back at the hospital, Frank and Rebecca inform Denise that John has taken the emergency room hostage. Refusing to betray her husband, Denise insists she knows nothing about what John might do and refuses to cooperate with the police. Rebecca then tells her that Michael has already been placed on the transplant waiting list. Believing her son has finally been given a chance, Denise reluctantly agrees to help. Outside, reporter Tuck Lampley interviews Jimmy, who openly supports John's actions. Jimmy angrily criticizes a healthcare system that treats people differently depending on how much money they have. Elsewhere, Frank and Chief Monroe argue over how to end a standoff. Monroe is ready to send in a sniper immediately. After losing patience, he removes Frank from command and takes control of the operation himself. Using Denise's phone call as a distraction, Monroe secretly orders a sniper to crawl through the hospital's ventilation shaft. At the same time, Lampley manages to broadcast the hospital's security camera footage live on television. Millions of viewers watch John's emotional conversation with his family. Even Rebecca can no longer hold back her tears. Without telling anyone, she quietly places Michael's name on the heart transplant waiting list herself. Inside the hospital, John has no idea that everything has changed. Moments later, Monroe gives the order to fire. The sniper's bullet strikes John's arm, but he manages to overpower the sniper and takes him hostage instead. News of the shooting spreads across the country, and even larger crowds gather outside the hospital. A few minutes later, John walks out of the emergency entrance, using the captured sniper as a human shield. Standing before the cameras and the growing crowd, he repeats his demand for Michael to be placed on the donor list. Frank tries one last time to reason with him. He tells John that the people outside are not there because they care about him. They are simply curious spectators. John pauses for a moment before making an offer. If Frank brings Michael to him, he will release every hostage and surrender peacefully. Frank agrees. As Michael is brought into the emergency room, an air ambulance arrives at another hospital with the woman who died in the earlier crash. Meanwhile, Michael's condition rapidly worsens. His blood pressure falls to 40, and Dr. Turner sadly tells John that his son will not survive much longer without a new heart. To everyone's shock, John calmly tells the doctor that he has already found one, his own. The entire room falls silent. Dr. Turner immediately refuses, explaining that he cannot perform such an operation. Lester interrupts, urging him to face reality and move on. Desperate, John pleads with him, saying Michael still has a future ahead of him. His son dreams of becoming a bodybuilder one day, and he deserves the chance to grow up. No matter how much John begs, Dr. Turner still refuses. Finally, John places the gun inside his own mouth and forces Dr. Turner to make a choice. Knowing he can no longer change John's mind, Dr. Turner reluctantly agrees, fully aware that the decision could destroy his own career. The woman who died in the traffic accident has been confirmed as an organ donor. Even more remarkably, her heart is a perfect match for Michael. Before anyone can tell John, he continues preparing for his sacrifice. He asks 2 people to witness and sign his will. Max signs it first, then looks at John in disbelief and asks whether he truly intends to go through with it. Even at that moment, John jokes that Max could still save him if he decides to donate his own heart instead. The light-hearted remark briefly eases the heavy silence filling the room. Tears welling in his eyes, John kneels beside Michael and gently tells him to always listen to his mother. He also reminds his son to grow up, earn plenty of money, and never end up trapped the way he has been. After sharing one final, heartbreaking goodbye with Michael, John prepares to sacrifice himself. He loads a single bullet into his revolver, the first real bullet that has ever been inside the gun.
And you tell me that gun was empty the whole time?
The only one ever considered killing was me.
At that very moment, Nurse Reggie receives an urgent fax announcing that a matching heart donor has been found. He immediately rushes to Rebecca with the incredible news. Rebecca tells Denise at once, and Denise desperately tries to contact John. Before she can explain, however, John switches off the walkie-talkie, determined to face the end on his own. Just as he raises the gun to his head, Denise bursts into the room and stops him in time. Outside, the crowd erupts into cheers as the donor heart arrives at the hospital. One by one, the hostages safely walk out of the emergency department. Wanting to buy John a few extra moments, Lester pretends to be John Q and willingly allows the police to arrest him instead. Frank immediately realizes the deception, but chooses to say nothing. Instead, he calmly walks into the operating area where John is waiting. Only after everything is finally over does Frank hand John the handcuffs and ask him to put them on himself. Hours later, Dr. Turner and his surgical team successfully complete the heart transplant. Michael survives. John's desperate actions not only save his son's life, but also spark a nationwide debate about the healthcare system and the families left behind by it. Despite receiving overwhelming public support, the law still takes its course. John is brought to trial, where the jury finds him guilty only of taking hostages, sentencing him to prison. For John, none of that matters anymore. He had already been prepared to give his own life if it meant saving his son. Now that Michael has a second chance to live, John has already received everything he ever wanted. Before leaving with the police, he smiles at Michael one last time and reminds him that it is not goodbye. It is simply, see you later. Thanks for watching this movie recap. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.